one communist in the State Department, let there still be one communist too many.
It's good to meet you. My name's Joe McCarthy. I'm running for Senate.
Well, I've never been much of one for politics myself.
Funny, neither have I.
He was the most powerful person in American public life. He had a gift for winning, and he had enormous energy.
How do you define McCarthyism, say?
Frankly, McCarthyism means calling a man a communist who is later proven to be one.
He was more popular than he should be, and it's very hard from this distance to understand why. I mean, he was a little jerk.
Name it, and I'll say it.
Basically everything you've ever heard about McCarthy, you just have to hit the delete button on.
This fight to expose those who would destroy this nation will go on and on.
He picked on minor people and ruined some people's lives.
To this cause, ladies and gentlemen, I have dedicated all that I have and all that I am.
You know, the truth needs to be told. There are subversives working for the government. I've got the list.
But that passion, that conviction of his did attract millions of people. But there was a terrible price to be paid for it.
It's a great story. It's a story that maybe could only happen in America, of this farm boy.
The Honorable Joseph R. McCarthy.
Who became world famous and got his name in the dictionary. And in the long run, achieved nothing positive.
Great American patriot. Sent by God, delivered here at exactly the right time, and immunized America from communist propaganda for the next 30 years.
When I was a boy on the farm, my mother used to raise chickens. From these chickens, an entire family survived, as well as being the source of my mother's Christmas money. Now, the greatest enemy of a chicken is the skunk. In order to protect Mother's chickens, my three brothers and I had to dig out and destroy those skunks.
Joe, come on. Yeah, just a second. Lousy skunk.
It was a dirty, foul, unpleasant, stinking bit of business. A farm boy learns early in life that the smelliest jobs are the ones that the nice little boys don't do.
Are you a member of the communist conspiracy as of this moment?
But they say, oh, it's all right to uncover them, but don't get rough doing it, McCarthy.
What motivated McCarthy was not a genuine fear of any great communist conspiracy, but the use of this for his own political advancement.
How many Americans have died and will die because of this sellout to communist Russia? God only knows.
You had the backdrop of the Korean War going on, fear of the bomb, fear of subversion, and the idea that there was a conspiracy loose throughout the land. He was able to take all of that and package it into one explosive sort of combination to change public opinion and elevate himself, and he did it.
Well, I think Joe McCarthy was, as we all are, he was a bundle of contradictions. On the one hand, somebody who was characterized as dangerous or a demagogue or what have you, and here I was seeing him up close and personal, and he was really just a charming, gregarious, outgoing Irishman who loved a good time, loved a good story, and loved a good drink.
Everywhere he went, people loved him. That's important to understand. He was a terribly popular person. The ogre you see in the Army McCarthy hearings on film is not the man that they knew here in Wisconsin at all.
Oh, Appleton, boy, where do you start? This is a wonderful community to raise a family, make a living, religious community, great people.
McCarthy was a farm boy. The farm buildings are still there west of Appleton, and one of several children born to a perfectly average, normal Catholic parents. I interviewed a brother who looked just like him, who was perfectly normal and had spent his life as a manual laborer up in the area, and Joe might have too, except that Joe was really smart, really smart. There was a tricky side to him. He could be ruthless. You play poker with him, you were in trouble, because he'd cheat.
Sorry, boys.
Joe McCarthy was a very ambitious guy from the beginning. He really always wanted to rise above his roots, and he wanted to succeed.
Joe, come on! Leave me alone! I'm all right! Let go of me!
It's really something for a farm boy to think that he could become a United States Senator. He just had it within him to do it. And you couldn't tell Joe no. He would do it, and he did. He dropped out of school the way most farm kids did in the 8th grade and raised chickens for a time. And then, through friends, was advised that he really should go back to school. And so he devoted himself in a breathtaking manner in a little school up in Manawa, not far from where he was born and raised, and made it all the way through high school in under a year. He was a boxer. He ran, he worked out, but mostly he studied. And he passed all those tests, and he did it on his own, and he just kept going. McCarthy was born and raised a Democrat, and actually wore an FDR pin at one point in his young life. With him, things were not all that ideological as a young man. He was interested in elevating himself and getting into office, and he chose to associate with the right wing of the Republican Party, which is where the money was, because he could see that quite clearly that this was the way to get to elected office. And that's what he had in mind, was to become a judge and then to move to the Senate. He had it planned, he had it worked out.
I was a combat correspondent with the Marine Corps, and I'd been a newspaperman before the war. And he said, hey, Penn, do you think that you could dream up some kind of a story that I could send back to my friends in Wisconsin when the war is over and I go into politics? And I said, Joe, there's an old rule in the newspaper business. You can't write a story about it if you don't do something. Now, you're sitting around here and you're a nice fellow, but you're not doing anything. And he came back to me a few days later and he told me, he said, and I've been talking to my squadron leader and he said that it would be okay for me to ride the rear seat in the dive bombers and to make some direct observations as an intelligence officer. And I promised not to even try to shoot the gun so I don't shoot the tails off the plane. And I said, well, that sounds promising. Why don't you do it?
And then campaigned later on saying that he was Tail Gunner Joe and that he'd been up in the plains fighting the Japs. And the whole thing was made up. It was concocted, and that's the way it was.
So the arc of Joe McCarthy rising up from the little town in Wisconsin, and he was a very talented political figure. He had a gift for winning, and he had enormous energy.
My mother was Senator Joe McCarthy's older sister. And I'm going to read a letter that he wrote to her. It was dated May 8th, 1944. And he was stationed in the South Pacific at the time as a captain in the U.S. Marines. Dear Sis, Romy tells me that you have quit your job to devote full time to the campaign. This was his first campaign for the U.S. Senate. You are really a jewel, Sis. I know things look like hell now, Sis, but if only we can get out the 800,000 letters, I shall win by a landslide. They can't possibly beat us, Sis. If everyone in the state gets a letter and a folder.
Did anyone ever campaign harder than Joe McCarthy? The other man had been in office for 25 years or some such figure, and how could he do it? Just sheer McCarthy guts. That's the way he was. Watch me. I'll go door to door.
Oh, God damn it!
Hello there. Do you need some help? I heard the brakes. What happened?
No, thank you, sir. I think we're okay. There was just a skunk crossing the road, and I didn't want to hurt the little bastard.
Well, if you boys don't need anything, I'll be,
Hang on just a second, sir. We've been up and down this road all day. It's good to meet you. My name's Joe McCarthy. I'm from Grand Chute. I'm running for Senate.
Was that so? Well, I've never been much of one for politics myself.
Funny, neither have I. Say, by any chance, are you Steve Miller?
Yeah, that's me.
So this is where they make Wisconsin's best cheese?
Well, Mr. McCarthy, I don't know about that, but we sure believe in quality around here.
Mind if I take a look around?
Yeah, come on.
See, I used to live in Appleton.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to be taking a look at it later on.
That's a beautiful place. It's beautiful.
Now, this is all your land, Steve,
Yeah, it's
terrific. Yeah.
He immediately established himself with ambitions. He wanted to go far.
Joe tried to make a name for himself. He got involved in housing and tried to create some legislation that he could put his name on. Nothing seemed to work. Nothing seemed to work.
I tell you, the Pennsylvania miners are cutting their own throats. They want to take us back to the days of the Depression. And America does not want to go back to the days of the Depression. We all know what it's like to have no work, no jobs, no possibilities.
Freshman senators,
That
it's
is
always
what
the
these
same.
miners, these striking miners.
He wasn't going anywhere. But he saw himself not gaining the way he was going, and so he decided to take it on his own, to find an issue, to use it, to exploit it, to attack it, and don't worry about the Republican apparat or the Democratic apparat. He could be the loner, and he'd rise to power that way.
What happened after the war, when Germany was defeated? The Soviet regime under Stalin felt so arrogant. They thought they could conquer all of Europe. And in fact, as you know, the Soviet troops occupied Eastern Europe. Well, for the United States, and particularly for the conservative circles, it was clear that the Soviets may not stop, that the Soviets may move forward.
There was a great deal of tension in the country. First of all, there was the fear of the bomb, communism and the atomic bomb. And if you walked around any American city, you had underground safety places for the war, civil defense shelters all over America. And so you couldn't escape this idea. School children would have to huddle under their desks to get ready for an atomic attack.
The Soviets maintained a huge espionage network in the United States. It was exposed by Elizabeth Bentley, a lady who was part of the Soviet espionage network.
Paying dues, certainly.
Did you pay your dues?
Yes, I paid my dues.
The Department of the Treasury, the number 2 man, Harry Dexter White, was a Soviet informer, and he provided us with a huge amount of valuable information. He was close to President Roosevelt's administration. That's a fact of life, and many people do not want to admit it, but that was a fact.
The whole Republican Party had figured that they were going to come back to power by attacking the Democrats as being liberal, communistic, socialistic, and traitorous. That was their theme.
I am holding in my hand a microfilm of the most confidential, highly secret State Department documents. This microfilm was made for the purpose of transmitting these documents in reduced form to the Soviet Union. The documents were obtained from State Department employees who were communists and who were interested in sending those documents to the Soviet Union, where the interests of the Soviet Union were in direct conflict with the United States. It is the intention of the Committee on Un-American Activities to pursue this investigation until we put the spotlight on those high officials in the State Department who were responsible for selling this country down the river.
I am not and never have been a member of the Communist Party. This is mine.
Look, Alger Hiss was a Soviet agent for many years.
And even with the conviction of Alger Hiss, which happened in 1950, the establishment here in America was still not willing to concede that there was a serious problem, that there really were communists or had been communists in government.
I think the track record is pretty clear. The people who were running the government in the 1940s had been asleep at the wheel. They allowed this communist penetration to happen. They not only allowed it to happen, but then even when they were told about it, they didn't do anything about it.
McCarthy saw a cause that could become a vehicle for him, and he exploited it.
When Joe McCarthy was just getting interested in the subject of communism and anti-communism, he wanted to make a speech to sort of kick this interest of his off down in Wheeling, West Virginia. It was in February of 1950.
And there he gave a speech in which he said there were commies all over the State Department, 205 of them, and he knew their names.
He said that nearly 200 Soviet agents who work in the State Department, which was not true. We did have a dozen or so, but not 200.
He didn't have any names. This was sheer nonsense. It was McCarthy's Irish bravado. It was the way he was.
During this speech, his exact words were, "Right at this moment, right this instant, our government is being infiltrated by communists." He repeated it the second time, and the audience were just amazed. I don't think any of us in Wheeling ever heard the word communist before.
Well, he quickly discovered that he was on the front page of the paper. And it dawned on him. This is the way of the future. He couldn't come up with an explanation for a way to get legislation he could put his name on, but
I don't intend to try to fight communism and corruption, State Department fashion with a silk handkerchief. Can't be done.
Joe quickly became the symbol for the Red Scare. Why was he the symbol? Because he was the loudest, the brashest, the most irresponsible of them all. And he loved it. And now the reporters didn't laugh at him. They hounded his every step.
She was a very brilliant lady in her own right. She had a tremendous impact on the senator. Jeannie was the biggest influence.
You know, the truth needs to be told. There are subversives working for the government. I've got the list. Actually, I think there are even some of them working for the CIA, and I can prove it.
Communists have been able to propel Red China to a position of major influence in the Eastern world.
I was a Foreign Service officer. Recently returned from China, where I had had probably more opportunity than any other American to observe the Chinese communists, then very much in the news because of the deteriorating situation in China.
Service was born in China. He knew Chiang Kai-shek, he knew Mao, and in effect, his report said, we are going to have to deal with Mao. He is gaining in strength. There's every indication he will be successful in gaining the leadership of China, and we have to prepare for that. And these were not promoting Mao. It was warning the United States, get to know everything you can, because this is going to be trouble.
Mr. Chairman, today this man, John S. Service, is a ranking officer in the policy-making group of untouchables on duty. The communist affiliations of Service are well known. His background is crystal clear.
McCarthy learned the advantages of the big lie. You don't tell a little lie, nobody cares. You don't say, I think that there's a suspicious man at the grocery store. You say, the State Department is full of Russian communists. You make big lies, and that's what he instinctively understood.
The most sensational case is that of Owen Lattimore, a prominent professor of history who was active in political circles. Lattimore, says McCarthy, is the top Russian spy, the key man in a Russian espionage ring. I am willing, says the senator, to stand or fall on the Lattimore case. Lattimore replies to McCarthy's charges.
I am not and never have been a member of the Communist Party. I have never been affiliated with or associated with the Communist Party. I trust that the senator's promise that he will retire from the arena if his charges against me fail is not as insincere as his twice-repeated promise to resign if he should fail to repeat his libelous accusations in a forum which would expose him to suit. I hope the senator will in fact lay his machine gun down.
The cartoonist, Herbert Bloch, invented a word, McCarthyism. McCarthyism really was an irresponsible attempt to frighten the American people about communist spies for the purpose of political gain.
McCarthyism is Americanism with your sleeves rolled up. And what J. Edgar Hoover said, the best way to get them is to expose them.
Every other senator will be jealous of me right now.
Pardon?
I bet there's never been a single senator in the history of these United States that had a more beautiful, ambitious, or intelligent assistant. This would be a good headline for the morning papers. Former cherry blossom queen is McCarthy's secret weapon against communism.
I was just about to finish our book. Now look here. It all starts with Wheeling. Then there are chapters on Atchison, Jessup, Lattimore, Marshall, Tidings. And then, of course, some impressive quotes from communists in the Daily Worker.
I'm impressed. Well. Yes, well, it's quite late. Let's have a midnight snack at the colonies.
Oh,
Gee, I won't take no for an answer. Come on.
Okay.
This very moment, GIs are consecrating the hills and the valleys of Korea with American blood, but not all the blood is staining the Korean hills and valleys. Some of it is deeply and permanently staining the hands of Washington politicians. Today, a nation that can hardly be seen on the map thumbs its nose at the mighty United States and degrades us in the eyes of the world.
The Korean War is only one phase of this war between international atheistic communism and our free civilization. And we have been losing that war since the shooting part of World War II ended, losing it at an incredibly fantastic rate of speed. Losing that war at the rate of 100 million people a year. I have been trying to expose and force out of high positions in government those who are in charge of our deliberate, planned retreat from victory.
McCarthy was a genius at manipulating opinion. And to manipulate opinion, you had to manipulate the press.
The press made him popular. He was just the right guy with the press at the right time.
Hey, boys, why don't you come over to my house tomorrow night? Spaghetti, I'll cook. Say 8:30?
We'll be there.
Reporters who he would see all the time covering him and so forth, and he'd say, no, kid with him, what are you looking for today? Can I give you a headline? Can I give you a scoop? Can I give you a Pulitzer Prize? Stuff like that.
He would court the press. He would have them over to his house. He would cook steaks for them, and they would have drinks and so forth, and he'd give them secrets that it could be used. He knew how to use the elements of publicity to gain power.
If there was a Republican policy meeting, a meeting that was supposed to be secret, a meeting that newsmen were not supposed to know about, he'd put me on an extension, and he'd call Senator Robert Taft, the Republican leader, and senator to senator ask him what happened. And Robert Taft, thinking that he was talking to a fellow senator, would tell him what happened, and I would be able to get the entire story.
And now, gentlemen, I've got something real special for you. A Black Russian made of vodka and coffee liqueur. And this vodka comes straight out of Commuland. Me first, I think.
He knew what the deadlines were of the various editions. He knew how to give them sound bites, what we call sound bites today. You know, brief, short, punchy statements.
Joe, this is in the Chicago Tribune. Did you say this?
Sure, I said it. And in fact, I'll say it again. For you or for him, or maybe something else. How about subversive activities in elite schools? What else? Name it, and I'll say it. One for the stomach.
He was a daily drama, and most of the press did a very bad job. But most journalists who covered McCarthy and knew that he was a circus act couldn't say so in their papers. They had to treat him as though he were a serious politician doing a serious job, or simply repeat what he said without any kind of context. That was one of the great failures of the news media.
There was opposition to him. The New York Times, a lot of the papers, but he would attack all those. You see, that's part of the communist conspiracy. They're out to destroy a good American.
So, Drew, how's the red world of the Fourth Estate?
Joe, no American journalist likes commies or traitors.
Except the guys from the Daily Worker and some of your colleagues from Wisconsin who write and think like the Daily Worker.
Really, Joe, the press likes you. But you should stop accusing harmless scholars like Owen Lattimore, whom I know personally, of being a top Russian spy, or Dean Acheson of being a fellow traveler.
First of all, Drew, I don't consider Lattimore a harmless scholar. He's one of the ones responsible for handing China to Mao.
You're starting to sound like the grand accuser. My God, man, with all due respect, if you continue like this, I'll have to take sides against you.
You can't threaten me. I will continue to step on the gas because America needs someone like me at this crucial point in our history. You just wait and see. Public opinion will concede.
I, too, am part of public opinion, Joe.
Drew Pearson was the most powerful columnist in America at that time, and McCarthy accused him as being part of the communist conspiracy.
The amber light that distills and bewitches. You know, the other night, I told one of my fellow senators that today I wanted to discuss the background of Drew Pearson, one of the cleverest men who's ever prostituted one of the noblest professions, and this I certainly did. I came to realize that the task of exposing a man like this, or perhaps I should say person, was going to be an unpleasant and disagreeable one, which will no doubt leave me more than a bit bloodied.
Alcohol is an important part of all this, too, because Joe started drinking. Once he became in the spotlight, he began to drink.
Good evening, Senator Nixon.
Well, hello, Drew. Enjoy the evening.
Please don't take this the wrong way, but do you really think it was a good idea to invite Washington's two biggest cockerels to the same party?
Well, I thought it would be a nice opportunity for them to iron out their differences. Hi, good to see you. Nice to see you. Lovely. Thank you. Cheers.
Ah, Drew. I hate to keep you, but I just wanted to let you know that I'm gonna tear you apart on the Senate floor tomorrow.
I'm not going to waste my time. Maybe you should worry a bit more about paying your taxes.
Why, you lousy son of a bitch. Let's take this outside, huh?
Listening, Joe, are you crazy?
The guy's as red as rust!
I knew the senator as a very gentle man, but I've seen the senator also when he was at his worst.
I'm not a candidate.
McCarthy had an enigmatic personality. He would give sometimes the most outrageous talk against somebody, calling them a pro-communist, giving the world a long record of things this person had done that was awful. And then, once the Klieg lights went off and the cameras went away, he would come up to the person, slap him on the back, and say, "Let's have a drink," or "Let's have dinner." And people were just stunned. What kind of person is this?
he made headlines, and he get more headlines, and the charges, and they never caught up with the charges. He'd make a charge and go on to the next charge, and he'd escalate the charges. Dean Acheson, the Secretary of State, was a traitor, the Red Dean, and he escalated up to Harry Truman, the President of the United States. And people thought, well, he must be right because we're in trouble. Otherwise, why do the Russians have the bomb? Why are we at war in Korea? Why are we having to huddle under our desks and so forth? So something had gone wrong, and McCarthy was able to articulate that to his constituencies, and they liked him.
Americans have a tendency to believe when there's a problem, there must be a solution. And when something goes wrong, there's somebody you can blame.
He made good television. He was active, pounding on the table, shouting at the witness, and people watched.
You were there. You told us?
What the people saw on their screens was a man who was accused of being an agent against his own country. And then he would continue with that more and more accusations. And once he implanted that idea in the minds of the television viewers, and the man kept saying, but sir, don't try to make excuses to me.
Now, I don't think you can get any reasonable man to believe that you can't think of a single name.
What he did was he picked on minor people, and foolishly in many cases, and ruined some people's lives.
I came to Harvard as an undergraduate in 1944 during World War II. I was quite young, I was 16. And I met a number of other undergraduates who were involved in political activities. I didn't realize that it was the Communist Party at that point. We would read and discuss Karl Marx and Engels, and occasionally go pass out leaflets in front of a factory gate or something like that. Nothing that really changed the world, I'm afraid. And no, we did not give the atom bomb to the Soviet Union. All of us were young, and we were all motivated by idealistic reasons, and perhaps a little naive and gullible. I dropped out without becoming anti-communist. I just decided, no, this is kind of silly. I'm not accomplishing anything. But I did well as a graduate student, and was happily employed and on the way to an academic career when that Communist Party background caught up to me. McCarthy, at the end of the hearing, said things like I had been one of the most important people in the Communist Party, and I didn't deserve citizenship, and our boys were being slaughtered in Korea because of traitors like me, that kind of thing.
And I really can't think of anybody I've ever met or read about who was quite so brazen. So people assumed he was cynical. What else could they think? That's just the way he was.
When I was on trial, I remember bumping into him in the courtroom corridor. He threw his arm around me and said, "Hello, Leo." And his whole attitude was, don't hold this against me personally. This is just my script, my role. Your role is to play the victim, and, nothing personal in this, kid, sorry. He had a certain amount of charm and warmth. He was not a total monster, but he played this role with the support of the press and of television. I hope, not too many years from now, people will say, McCarthy, McCarthyism, what was that?
McCarthyism is the brouhaha that surrounded the nonsensical accusations of a drunk who happened to be a United States senator and have a good platform.
If you look at American history in that period of time, it's all Joe McCarthy. The name McCarthyism. And the fact is, he was only someone carrying out things that were laid out by other people. And Nixon was the one who was most effective in that period.
Senator.
Yeah?
What do you think about Richard Nixon running for vice president?
The senator from California is certainly a real star-spangled American. A man who has done a truly Samsonian job of digging out some of the most dangerous undercover communists alive. I think he's the best man for the job.
Joe, it's your friend Urban from Appleton.
Sorry, boys, I've been expecting a call. Herb, my old friend. Yes, I'm all right. Yeah. It just gets right up my nose that everyone wants to get a comment on Nixon. Yeah, that prick is kissing Ike's ass all the way to the White House.
Nixon was very shrewd, very smart. McCarthy was smart, but he wasn't educated. He wasn't thoughtful. He was a blusterer. And Nixon had contempt for him, but he also was useful, so long as he stayed in line.
Nixon was a much more prudent man, a much more careful man, particularly as he got along in his career. Whereas Joe, that was not one of his major virtues.
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes. When McCarthy was facing off against a Democratic president in the person of Harry Truman, he had at least the tacit support and usually the explicit support of his colleagues in the Senate. But when he was at odds with a Republican president, that was very different.
Republican hopes soar with the nomination of their two new standard bearers.
It's not a secret that Eisenhower and Senator McCarthy did not get along. Their chemistry was completely opposite each other, socially and politically.
It will be my initial responsibility to see that subversion, disloyalty is kept out of the executive department. We will always appreciate and welcome congressional investigation, but the responsibility will rest squarely on the shoulders of the executive, and I hold that American principles of trial by jury, of the innocent until proved guilty, are all observed.
I spent about half an hour with the general last night. While I can't report that we agreed entirely on everything, I can report that when I left that meeting with the general, I had the same feeling as when I went in, and that is that he's a great American, will make a great president, an outstanding president.
McCarthy began to overreach himself. The ego. He saw himself as the next leader. He wanted to be president of the United States. And he saw Eisenhower as a rival.
A wave of excitement sweeps over the crowd, young and old, as the stewardship of the world's greatest democracy changes hands. Eisenhower takes the oath.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The 1952 elections, which were won by the Republicans, made McCarthy the chairman of the Senate Government Operations Committee and its permanent subcommittee on investigations. That changed everything.
I mean, not to mention his ease with dealing with the media. Right now, Lord God Almighty has seen fit to hand in the subcommittee on investigations. And investigations means all branches of the government. It means us, the agency.
Does that scare you?
No, it doesn't scare me. What I'm saying is you shouldn't underestimate McCarthy.
I think he was sort of a populist politician who latched on to an issue and found it ran away with him.
Think of him as a showman out of control. And that's why they couldn't call him off in '53. And the whole thing was supposed to be over, and everybody knew that, but McCarthy.
I may say that we have good reason to believe we'll get full cooperation from the new Secretary of State, Mr. Dulles. I think we can be helpful to him. There are, of course, some, putting it mildly, who are of a very questionable nature, and they will get our attention.
Then he got into some bad company, and things got out of hand. The bad company was essentially Roy Cohn.
Roy was a very energetic, brilliant young man. Roy knew the issues of subversion, having worked on the Rosenberg case as Assistant United States Attorney. He knew in depth the issues of subversion, where the senator really did not. Roy was the man behind the throne, so to speak.
He was super smart and super manipulative and super out for himself.
When and where were you born?
I was born in New York City in 1927.
You're 26 years old
That's
now?
right.
The charge of youth is justified.
Well, I plead guilty to that. I will say this, though, in mitigation of punishment, number one, I don't think it's my fault, and number two, since the charge has been made, I've been trying to figure out what I can do about it, and I haven't come up with an answer yet.
My evaluation of Roy would be he was good for McCarthy, but he was very bad for McCarthy. Because looking back at all the things that he personally was involved with, they all ended up in controversy. Roy did not thoroughly investigate an issue. Roy would get something, he'd go to Joe with it, and within days, we would be having public hearings. Jeannie confided in me more than once that she was concerned about Roy Cohn's influence on the senator. She got to where she did not like Roy.
Schein was, just a spoiled brat whose father owned some hotels somewhere in America.
If you look at these two men, Roy Cohn was short, dark, not particularly athletic. And here was Dave Schein, who was very tall, very blonde, a very good-looking guy.
At the time I presented to the Senate evidence of communists in government, I also presented a number of cases involving homosexuals. I have pointed out that while there is no necessary connection between perverts and communism, nevertheless the evidence indicates that foreign agents use these morally weak and vulnerable individuals for the purpose of carrying out their espionage activities. I am convinced that the sex pervert is a serious security risk, and as such is used by the communists and other subversive elements who are seeking to infiltrate our government.
There were some rumors, just rumors at this point, about Roy Cohn's sexual preference.
The two boys were a joke, pulling books out of the USIA libraries and so on that they thought were too far left or too this or too that.
They made the laughingstock of themselves, and that did not help McCarthy's position.
Excuse me, gentlemen. The press conference about to start any minute now.
We are here to gather information, to double-check leads we have, and to see a vast number of individuals.
And we know that communists writing about the United States under the communist line to lie about the United States are not giving the true picture. And I don't think we have a right to give the German people or any other people a false picture of life in the United States and the American way.
The reaction to Cohn and Schein by the European press was, they were appalled at what Cohn and Schein were trying to do, and they found it hard to take them seriously once they saw them, because they looked so incompetent and unqualified, and they kept asking themselves, why would the Americans pay any attention to these two kids?
Why do you think your trip got such a bad press, both here and abroad?
Well, that's not for me to judge. I suppose the press is entitled to say exactly what it wants. There was a good deal of misrepresentation as to the purpose of the trip. As certain elements within the State Department over in Germany put a tail on us, whose job apparently it was to feed all sorts of information and stories to the hostile press.
Joe McCarthy's popularity, his influence, was probably at its highest in the first part of 1953. And it wasn't until later, when there were some problems, that his popularity began to recede.
McCarthy attacked the CIA as being a nest of liberals, and the Harvards and the MITs and the most intellectual people, and these, you can't trust them, they're riven, and from Allen Dulles right on down, and that was a big target.
The day I met him, he told me I was going to handle the CIA investigation. I did do some work on the CIA. I interviewed some 20 or 25 people, and my recommendation to the senator, to Roy Cohn, to Frank Carr, that we discontinue the investigation. But no, the senator felt very, very deeply that the issues were critical. And the senator felt very strongly about that.
Oh, one thing about McCarthy. As you all know, he's got his case with Bundy now. Accused him of donating $400 to a defense fund for Al Hiss. Also claims Bundy was a member of some communist front organization as a youth. Anyway, we've sent Bill on vacation to Europe before he could be subpoenaed. I'll have to make an announcement. Any employee of CIA giving information to Joseph McCarthy, anything at all, will be let go immediately.
Well, that's pretty brave, Alan. I think McCarthy's going to get even more furious.
Well, the president said he doesn't want to get into a pissing contest with that skunk. I told Ike I'll have to resign if he can't protect CIA from half-cocked investigators like McCarthy. But he assured me that we'll be supportive with all forces available to him, and let me assure you that those forces are a hell of a lot stronger than Joe McCarthy.
Well, certainly the CIA as an institution came to abhor McCarthy because he accused the CIA of being subversive, which was insane.
Nixon's role in all of this was that once the Republicans got elected in 1952, when Nixon was on the ticket, it was his job to call McCarthy off.
Now listen, Joe, there's something imperative I need to talk to you about. I'm afraid you and your fellow committee members are skating on thin ice here. Boy, don't you understand, we got a Republican administration here. Have you forgotten that Dulles is brother to the Secretary of State? A public investigation of the CIA jeopardizes not only our national interest and our relationship with our allies, it puts each and every single operation of the agency at risk. The President, Joe, is in close quarters not only with the Dulles brothers, but with all those establishment guys. You can't just take on the whole damn world. That's something you're gonna have to learn, and fast.
Why the long faces? Don't let them spoil the party.
I'm sure you've heard Joe McCarthy's getting married next week?
I thought he was married to Roy Cohn.
Apparently not. He's marrying the charming Miss Jean Kerr at St. Matthew's Cathedral.
Hold on. You're not actually planning on going, are you?
You bet your ass I am. No way I can miss such a historic event like Tail Gunner Joe's wedding.
3,500 well-wishers, a record throng, gather outside St. Matthew's Cathedral in Washington as notables arrive for Senator McCarthy's wedding. Movie star Constance Bennett and Vice President Nixon attend the colorful nuptials in which the controversial Wisconsin senator is wed to his former aide and one-time university beauty queen, Jean Kerr. The new Mrs. McCarthy, who is 14 years younger than her famous groom, is a storybook bride who captures the hearts of onlookers in front of the cathedral. Then on to the reception where Joe and Jean do the honors with a king-sized wedding cake, and Jack Dempsey busses the bride. Best wishes to bride and groom.
We were deeply involved with the investigation at Fort Monmouth, subversion in the Signal Corps. There were 35 security risks in the Army. The Army said there were security risks that they did nothing about. They did nothing about.
I think that the security measures out here at Monmouth under the old administration were about as sloppy as I've ever heard of. Again, I'd like to emphasize, so if I may, that the commanding officer's hands were tied to a great extent because when he would fire a communist or someone suspected of being an espionage agent, he would in almost all cases find that he would be reinstated by the screening board in Washington.
As a result of the Fort Monmouth investigation, they revised all of their policies within the Army of how to deal with security risks. And during that investigation, we learned about a communist dentist being assigned to Camp Kilmer. I investigated Perez. I got all the documentation. It was a solid case. He was a member of the party and all the rest of it. The fact that Irving Perez was a known member of the Communist Party was reason for he not even being allowed to serve in the United States Army. They promoted him and then gave him an honorable discharge. Joe mishandled it by attacking Zwicker. That, to me, was the straw that broke the camel's back.
This is the official reporter's record of the hearing. After he said that he wouldn't remove that general from the Army who cleared a communist major, I said to him, then, General, you should be removed from any command. Any man who has been given the honor of being promoted to general and who says, I will protect another general who protects communists is not fit to wear that uniform, General.
Both the Perez case and the Fort Monmouth case were two very solid cases that were mishandled by the committee. Those two cases alone, if they were handled properly by McCarthy, it would have made his career or his activities all worthwhile, because everything he would have exposed came true, were true facts. And unfortunately, he mishandled them.
He was not only just attacking the Democrats and the press, but he began to attack the American Army, where Eisenhower, after all, had been the great general of the war, etc., etc.
I wish that Eisenhower had taken a stronger stand against McCarthy. But in fact, Eisenhower not only leaned over backwards, he actually caved in to McCarthy's pressures on several occasions.
Until McCarthy said the United States Army was infiltrated by communists. Then Eisenhower got interested.
The word in the White House was, get McCarthy.
I wonder, Mr. Vice President, Joe McCarthy's attacks on the armed forces, what is Ike gonna do? I mean, he was Supreme Commander of Allied forces during the war. He climbed the ranks of that very army, and he still has many close friends there.
Joe McCarthy is not the problem. Roy Cohn is the problem, and believe me, we're gonna fix him. With Ike's staff, the Army, and the CIA on the case, well, there are so many people dealing with this damn thing, they practically constitute a small army themselves.
And are you sure Roy, Joe, and Serene, and Juliana aren't aware of these intentions?
Well, they may be aware of some pink dentists in the Army, but they have not got the slightest clue about what they've got coming. Now, mark my words. The first, well, shall we say, victim will be Roy Cohn.
So now the Army has one of the McCarthy staffers in its clutches, and the McCarthy committee is investigating the Army, so you've got this opportunity for mutual leverage in the situation.
So much of the Army-McCarthy trap that McCarthy fell into that brought him down, that ruined him, stemmed from the fact that Roy Cohn was a homosexual who was in love with G. David Chine and tried to get him leaves from his military service.
On the 19th, arrangements were being made for a trip to Fort Monmouth.
And when the Army resisted, Cohn, who had a terrible temper, decided to put the screws on the Army, and he got McCarthy to back him, and then the whole thing exploded.
I believe very, very deeply that there was a conspiracy, not a criminal conspiracy, but a political conspiracy to destroy Joe McCarthy, initiated by a famous meeting that was conducted in the office of the Attorney General of the United States on January the 21st of 1954. At that meeting, beside the Attorney General of the United States was Sherman Adams, Chief of Staff of the Eisenhower White House, Bill Rogers, Deputy Attorney General, John Adams, Assistant to the Secretary of the Army, and Henry Cabot Lodge, our U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. I believe that the President of the United States himself knew what was happening. At that meeting, Sherman Adams directed John Adams to keep a chronology of all of the actions by Cohn and Chine seeking favorable treatment from the Department of the Army for David Chine.
My goodness, the cheese and sausages are delicious.
I know. I brought the cheese back from my friend Steve Miller in Outagamie County. John, I have to confess, there's just one little thing I was a bit disappointed about. This afternoon, my Republican friends within our committee brought to my attention a report authored by you regarding Roy's alleged pressure on the Army.
Well, you and I both know how quickly the press gets wind of these.
Hell, never mind. Why don't you just tell the Army to give Dave some assignment in New York and we'll forget the whole thing?
But didn't you yourself admit to me that he was replaceable?
Oh, truth be told, John, we both know the Army is walking straight into a nasty, lengthy war with Roy.
But...
Oh, and even if Roy resigned and they were fired from the committee staff, he'd still continue to wage his war from Washington. You know about his friends in the media. He'd start a campaign alleging favoritism within the Army, and once he'd started, he'd leave no stone unturned. There'd be articles in every publication imaginable.
Good evening. Tonight, See It Now devotes its entire half hour to a report on Senator Joseph R. McCarthy, told mainly in his own words and pictures. If the senator feels that we have done violence to his words or pictures and desires, so to speak, to answer himself, an opportunity will be afforded him on this program.
People hadn't really seen Joe McCarthy at that point. They'd seen stories about Joe McCarthy. They'd seen his speeches. They'd seen his attacks and the headlines. But then they saw him in person, in action. And that's when his arc began to diminish and he disintegrated.
Tomorrow is the symbol, the leader, and the cleverest of the jackal pack, which is always found at the throat of anyone who dares to expose individual communists and traitors.
The Murrow broadcasts were ruinous to McCarthy. And I think that if he'd understood television as well as he understood the print press, he would have fared much better.
Senator Munt made a statement in Washington today urging that the investigation of the Army be taken out of McCarthy's hands. How do you feel about this, Senator?
I think that I am a necessary witness before the committee. I think every witness on this should be under oath. I propose to ask Senator Munt if he will take the chairmanship, that he put me under oath and get the information which I have.
The Army McCarthy hearings were what finally broke Joe McCarthy.
Gentlemen, please take your seats. Now, before we get to Guatemala, I feel I need to inform you that there's going to be a final shootout, if you will, between the U.S. Army and Senator McCarthy. As its main weapon, the Army will use the drafting of Private David Shine and the questionable efforts of Roy Cohn to have him reinstated to the Good Senator's subcommittee.
Reminds me of a certain Al Capone forgetting to pay his taxes.
The hearings will be televised in full.
How do you know all this?
Well, I don't. And neither do you, for that matter. It's a secret. But I assure you, there they'll be, so the whole nation can watch Joe destroy himself.
I wouldn't be so sure about that.
Oh, but I am. There's an old saying, many hounds will soon catch the hare. But as I like to put it, too many hares can be the death of even an old Irish bulldog.
Wait a minute, I need to just write the last part.
Now let's discuss Guatemala.
Guatemala.
Incidentally, do you think these hearings ought to be televised?
Yes, I'm very much in favor of anything which will bring the American people closer to the operations of their government. I think that they are entitled to a first-hand view of just what goes on and just who's doing what.
Finally, there is a showdown between McCarthy and the United States Army. A Senate subcommittee holds public hearings into the Army-McCarthy controversy. Each day, television brings the battle to 20 million viewers across the nation. It is one of the most extraordinary spectacles in the history of American politics.
And this was one thing that the power of television at its best, it could not diminish what people saw. It wasn't faked, it wasn't created, you were seeing it as it happened, and it was frightening and devastating.
And television was really used as a weapon against him. I mean, television was just coming into its own at this time. And the Army McCarthy hearings, where he came across as gruff and interrupting and ill-mannered, even though the hearing showed he was basically right in substance. Very bad image there.
It was really a fiasco. I was ashamed to be part of it. I think the record would show that he personally was not involved in seeking preferential treatment for Shine, but his staff was involved. And to him, it wasn't preferential treatment. To the senator, it was his dedication to continue the work of what the committee was doing. And the fact that we were sitting there with the controversy over who gave Shine preferential treatment was an absolutely ridiculous operation. It was a waste of the people's time, money, energy, and everything else, and it didn't prove a damn thing.
I'd suggest in the interest of these hearings, the charges are often forgotten. The charges were, did Senator McCarthy and two members of his staff use improper pressure for Mr. David Shine with the Army? The countercharge was that there was blackmail on the part of the Army and the use of Mr. Shine as a hostage. are those of the charges that have been made.
Gentlemen,
John.
let's talk about Shine.
Yeah. Let's talk about Shine. The so-called Secretary of the Army has double-crossed me, refusing to assign Dave to New York immediately. He would never have been drafted, never in a million years, had he not been associated with his subcommittee. Are you even aware of the mistreatment that he's had to face at Fort Dix?
Shine isn't being mistreated. And as you well know, the selective service system, not the Army, determines who should serve.
Shit. Roy, let's keep our heads here. We gotta find a solution. Otherwise, this whole ugly mess will turn against us.
You can't feed me this. Since when has disloyalty become acceptable?
Roy, calm down. Let's talk about this in private.
I said, let's talk about Shine.
Roy!
And that started a chain of events, an experience similar to none which I have had in my life. Mr. Cohn became extremely agitated and he became extremely abusive. I pointed out to him that the national interest required that Shine be treated just like every other soldier. And he responded with even more force, "We'll wreck the Army."
I do not remember saying any of those things the way Mr. Adams has them.
And as I get it now, you're saying that you have no recollection of it.
No, sir. I say I do not recall having said that.
Well, that's what I get your answer
Yes,
to be
sir.
now. You don't recall having said it.
No, sir.
But you don't deny it.
Sir, I'm saying I did not say that. I am sure
All
I
right,
did.
now you're saying you did not say it, Mr. Cohn.
Yes, sir. I say I am
Very well.
sure that I did not make that statement, and I am sure that Mr. Adams and anybody else with any sense, and Mr. Adams has a lot of sense, could not ever believe that I was threatening to wreck the Army or that I could wreck the Army. I say, sir, the statement is ridiculous.
Senator McCarthy said, Roy thinks that Dave ought to be a general and operate from a penthouse on the Waldorf Astoria, or words to that effect. I may say that during my tenure as Secretary of the Army, there is no record that matches this persistent, tireless effort to obtain special consideration and privileges for this man.
When Mr. Reber came to my office and I discussed, may I finish, please? When Mr. Reber came to my office and I discussed the question of whether or not Mr. Shine was entitled to a commission, and Mr. Reber said he was entitled to on his judgment. May I finish May I finish my statement?
You're giving testimony.
Well, please
Now, when
don't
you're
object till my 10
sworn-
minutes are up, then.
Just a minute. Well, I have a right to object
Well,
any
don't object
time
now.
that I think
John, don't object in the
anything's
middle of
out
my
line.
question. Let me state my position, will you?
I will raise it as briefly as I can.
McCarthy, by that point, he was drinking very heavily, a quart or more a day. He didn't show it, but he was an alcoholic.
You shouldn't do that, Mr. Simon. That's just dishonest. That's the same thing that the Communist Party has been doing too long.
Apparently every time anybody says anything against anybody working for Senator McCarthy,
Just
he
answer
is
the question.
swearing them and is accusing them of communism.
Just answer the question. Do you know of any...
That's the best answer that I can give. Do you?
Now, you can run away if you like, Stu. You can run away if you like. You have been here trying to smear the staff of this committee. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. Do you have any information to indicate that there is anyone in my staff who is subversive, as you have indicated in your questioning?
When people saw the character of him on that screen, sneering, leaning forward, brutal, attacking, and the most outrageous kind of thing, and Americans were horrified.
Mr. Cohn, what is the exact number of communists or subversives that are loose today in these defense plans?
The exact number that is loose, sir?
Yes, sir.
I don't know.
Roughly how many?
I can only tell you, sir, what we know about.
Well, that's 130, is that right?
Yes, sir. I'm going to try to particularize for you if I can.
I'm in a hurry. I don't want the sun to go down while they're still in there if we can get them out.
Now, Mr. Welch made a statement
I raised a point of order that it was not a proper point of order.
I don't think that he recognized when things were turning against him. He kept on rambling on and on about point of order, and so on. And clearly the audience was losing all sympathy with him.
If what I say...
I'd like to say that if...
Now, Mr. Chairman, do I have the floor now, or do I not?
The council says it's not a point of order.
Oh, be quiet. Mr. Chairman?
I haven't the slightest intention of being quiet.
Even Cohn couldn't control him at the end. The famous mistake that he made about Fisher, Fred Fisher, the whole thing exploded.
We had all advised the senator not to raise that issue. And Welsh agreed that he would not raise Roy's draft status if the senator would not raise the question of the young lawyer.
Is a member of an organization not named by me, but named by various committees.
Roy Cohn turns white because he realized what Joe had done. He had told him not to do it, but he was just so passionate and got involved so deeply.
I have hesitated bringing that up, but I have been rather bored with your phony request to Mr. Cohen here that he personally get every communist out of government before sundown. Therefore, we will give you the information about the young man in your own organization.
Until this moment, Senator, I think I never really gauged your cruelty or your recklessness. Fred Fisher is a young man who went to the Harvard Law School and came into my firm and is starting what looks to be a brilliant career with us. Let us not assassinate this lad further, Senator. You've done enough. Have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency?
Mr. Welch talks about any sense of decency.
I will not discuss it further. I will not ask Mr. Cohen any more witnesses. You, Mr. Chairman, may, if you will, call the next witness.
When all said and done, he's just an old man. You know, he was as soft as a marshmallow coming after me. And these papers are saying, you know, he had it all over me. It's bullshit.
You didn't cut that, did you?
You know what I mean? And he talks to me about decency. I mean, has anyone asked any of these commies about decency?
You're too right, Joe.
Where the hell did they get this actor of a lawyer from, anyhow? Some Boston night school, Hale and Dorr.
It wasn't going well. It wasn't going well at all. Many people gave him good advice. He didn't accept it.
Just exactly how important do you think Roy Cohn was to the committee?
Extremely important.
Do you think you're going to have a replacement for him soon, do you think?
It'll be impossible to replace Roy. We'll get a man to take his place, yes, but it'll be impossible to replace him.
I promise you that in public life or in private life, as long as I am here, I will always be in this fight.
The subcommittee considering charges against Senator McCarthy ends almost a month's proceedings in Washington, finding their fellow senator acted in a manner they call contemptuous and reprehensible. Senator Watkins of Utah headed the committee, which heard so much testimony it takes this cart to carry it.
He is censured on December 2nd, 1954, by the United States Senate. People are turning their backs on him. The reporters are laughing at him. He's invited no place.
Oh, we were all delighted at his downfall. We were rubbing our hands to you know, how does America get rid of somebody like that?
Mary, please, I need you in my office.
Seems our great war hero has rediscovered how to kick a man when he's down. Just heard that the president congratulated old Flanders and Welch on their respective roles against Joe. And as if that wasn't bad enough, the chairman of the Senate Censure Committee was invited to the White House yesterday. The president congratulated Senator Watkins on a very splendid job.
It must have been as if Christmas had come early for Ike's press secretary. The man didn't waste a single second before informing every news outlet imaginable.
I feel no different tonight than I did last night. I am very happy to have this circus ended so that we can get back to the work of digging out communism, corruption, treason in government. That job will start officially Monday morning after 10 months of forced inaction.
Well, you know, Washington, D.C. is really a cruel town. It really is a cruel town. And Harry Truman, President Truman, once said, if you want a friend in Washington, get a dog. And the number of famous people who have been dropped, abandoned, ignored are legion. And Joe McCarthy was one of them.
Close the door. During the Eisenhower campaign, I spoke from coast to coast, promising the American people that if they elected the Eisenhower administration, they could be assured a vigorous, forceful drive against communists in government. Unfortunately, in that I was mistaken. I find that the president, on the one hand, congratulates senators who hold up the work of our committee, and on the other hand, urges that we be patient with the communist hoodlums who, as of this moment, are torturing and brainwashing American uniformed men in communist dungeons.
The senator's vitality was gone. He was a whipped man. A lot of his friends deserted him. He was lonely. He was more reclusive. He was definitely a changed man.
Hey, listen, Joe, I just wanted to say that... Oh. Stork Club.
Yeah, I know. It's like your second home, Roy. Personally, I never liked cafe society. Too many Hemingways and Josephine Bakers, JFKs and RFKs.
But Joe, you employed Bobby Kennedy in the committee, not to mention you dated a Kennedy girl. The Bostonians still love you to this day.
Can't trust the Kennedys. Or any of those Boston Brahmins either. In fact, can't trust anyone from the East Coast.
I'm from the East Coast.
Great, Roy. So you're the one exception. And look at you. You've lost your whole career simply because you stuck with me.
Senator, I'm as proud of that as I am of having the Rosenbergs fried in the chair. And I might add, your career is far from over.
Yeah.
Cardinal Spellman, who was a friend, helped him and Jean adopt a child in the last months of his life, and they thought if he had somebody like a child to live for, he could control it. And it didn't work.
Honey? It's for you. No, I'm sorry. He's not available. Joe, what about the baby? What about us? Doesn't that make you happy?
Good evening, my dear gentlemen of the press. If you'll excuse me, I've got some urgent work to do.
I wonder what on earth can be so urgent for Joe McCarthy these days.
Remember Eisenhower's saying, it's no longer McCarthyism, it's McCarthyism? Well, we've just seen McCarthyism.
Sometimes even Eisenhower can be funny.
And then, when it became clear that he was now totally deteriorating, he simply, it was a very curious phenomenon how this thunder and lightning suddenly sort of receded.
You can take the boy out of Wisconsin, but you can't take Wisconsin out of the boy.
Senator, what else can we cover in this interview?
No.
I welcome the honorable senator from Wisconsin, Joseph McCarthy. Senator, you've just been released from hospital where you had to undergo a lengthy treatment for a knee ailment. How are you tonight?
Oh, thanks, Mike. I'm feeling wonderful. Gina and I just brought our baby girl, Tierney, back from New York today. We're perfectly happy.
There are rumors that you are thinking about resigning from the Senate because of your health.
I'm up to the mark. I'll put on my 8-ounce gloves with anyone who thinks I'm ill.
Do you expect to have the president's endorsement for re-election?
What's the next question?
Didn't you affront the president for some leftist decisions?
I don't think the president himself is under communist influence. I think the motley crowd around him, the so-called palace guard, are doing this nation a great deal of damage.
Could you specify those in the official family you think dangerous?
Oh, I'd say Milton Eisenhower tops the list. Then C.D. Jackson, Sherman Adams. Oh, I don't think I'll run down the entire list.
He crumbled at the end of his life, you know. He just sort of lost all confidence. It's like the wind went out of his sails, and that everything that had propelled him sort of disappeared. And he was a kind of a wreck.
So, okay, they destroyed him. They spent the next 50 years building up a myth about the man, but he had done it. He saved America, and it was only another 20 years or so before Ronald Reagan came in and saved the world.
At one point in the Senate cloakroom, he came in, and there were some senators sitting there drinking. And he pulled out a glass and a big bottle, and he said, "The physicians tell me that if I take another drop, I'll die." And he filled up the glass and drank it down and left the room. Joe McCarthy committed suicide.
The phone rang, and we had just like started dinner. I'm not even sure what exact time he died, but someone called, and the phone was in the other room. We were in the kitchen, and my mother said, "Oh no," in disbelief.
You know, when a politician dies, 99% of his colleagues attend, but nobody cries. And most of them forget right away. That's politics.
I have to make a confession. It's not a very nice thing. Hearing that Senator McCarthy had died. It's a nasty thing to say, but I think I felt about time.
Well, you can say that's the fate of populists. They live by populism, they die by populism. At the time, I was surprised that it happened so quickly.
With all his paranoia, let me tell you, he played a positive role for the United States because he alerted the American public in a very crazy way. He alerted the federal security agencies about the threats to the United States. And some were imagined fancies of his somewhat true, real. And that's, the dual role of McCarthy in American history.
It really was an insane period, irrational period. It was very easy to say almost anything that was melodramatic and it would get attention. And only later did there begin to be a return to some kind of sanity in American politics.
The McCarthy techniques, the tactics, the same threads have appeared again and again in American cycles of politics to this day. He left the legacy of the tactics, the theme of enemies within.
The lessons learned from that period are very, very few indeed. It is sad that somebody that bright and good-looking and rough and aggressive and tough couldn't have done something for the world. And he failed to do so. And his death, like his life, is really very tragic.